I'm grateful that we have Missy Whiteman here because she knows what she's doing. She is a person who is an artist first and foremost. Every time I have a conversation with Missy, I feel like we just opened another door to another understanding that I was supposed to be paying attention to all along. And I'm grateful for her insight. I'm grateful for her perspective. I'm grateful for that vision. And when I'm able to view the work that she has produced, I feel that way again. And I know that our participants here in the Thunder InDIGIfest 2021, you're going to feel the same way. After we see the work, we're going to have a Q&A. So we're going to watch a clip and then we'll take some time for questions from those of you in the audience. I'm grateful that you're here, Missy. I'm grateful that we also have Don Mickelson here from PBS. So with that, I'll introduce Missy. I'm not sure what you want us to do right away, Missy.
Dos, Inana Missy Whiteman. I belong to the Northern Arapaho and Kickapoo Nations. And thank you so much, Liz, for having me here today. It is such an honor for me too. And I feel the same with you. It's like when we come together, there's like so much to share and there's also new direction that we need to take. And we kind of meet, we talk, and then we figure out which way to go. And then when we align, we align. And I have to say, like, having the opportunity to be here in an all Indigenous film festival with Indigenous directors and people in the industry, I feel like anytime we do this is a victory. Because for a long time, we really had to push against mainstream media and telling our own stories, but most importantly, our identities and who we are as people and truth-telling in our journeys in the history of Turtle Island. So thank you for doing this, and I appreciate it. I can introduce the first clip, and then we can go in and then do Q&A. Okay, so Don Mickelson, my colleague over here, she, I'm really grateful that you were very persistent with me. I appreciate, she's like, I really appreciate that because sometimes I'm like a Libra and I can be like a rock sometimes, and sometimes I can flow like the water. And in this case, she really gave me the opportunity to continue on, take the first step to continue my dad's legacy on. So some of you may know Ernie Whiteman. He was a visual artist. He worked at the Dream of Wild Health in Hugo. He was a cultural director. He was everyone's uncle, everyone's dad, everyone's grandpa. So much love and grace. And that's something that I really want to carry on, but also to carry on the legacy of his work. So really for me, carrying on this work means starting from where he left off. So we start with petroglyphs. We start with the story of this land. We talk about migration. We talk about how all of our nations align through our stories. And really for me, it's about unification of all people, not only tribal nations, but all people. And this is one way we can do it through film. So I'll introduce this. This is really about, creation stories, star stories, migration stories, and how they all interweave and tell one story.
That was beautiful, Missy. Every time I see that film, I just get kind of choked up. So, I get choked up over good things. Brief introduction of who this weird woman is who's talking. My name is Don Mickelson, and I'm the broadcast content manager at WDSE-WRPT, the PBS affiliate in Duluth, Minnesota. And we reached out to Missy, I think last fall, to begin this project. We were working on a longer production. So this was one of 4 films by various independent filmmakers called In This Place that spoke about stories of immigration and origin in Minnesota. And I reached out to Missy. I had known her from a group we were in together of female filmmakers supporting one another as women in this field, and was so excited to get started. And I want to start talking about the film right away in the sense that, I know that Missy mentioned it was kind of a rough road to get here, but when I saw that first cut, I was like, this was worth that road. And I was curious to hear a little bit more about how your father's work informed this piece and the legacy you're carrying forward with that.
Thank you, Dawn. Yeah, it's, I mean, to start out with petroglyphs and ancient symbols and their meaning, one of the things that, Dad always said is that these are forms of, this is our written language, for our Anishinaabe relatives. There are birch bark scrolls. There are also petroglyphs as well. And, as Brad had mentioned, he's like, we don't know what we left behind. We have no idea what we left in our homelands. Our Dakota relatives also have petroglyphs and have these ancient symbols that help us to navigate Mother Earth. So, to me, like, I grew up with stories about him back home, learning to read these symbols and making it a lifelong commitment and a lifelong journey. And, really what I've taken in and what I've observed and absorbed has really helped navigate the second phase of my work, which is, more along the lines of star knowledge and sacred sites. And for us, it's very important to understand, like, what was there first, prior to European contact, what came after that, the history, including treaties, including all of the different corporate entities that really came in and took up a lot of resources. But then now we're really in a time of healing. We're in a time of truth telling and healing. And so now, how do we take that truth? How do we take those truths, bring that forward? And then how do we find a way to collectively heal? And so that's really, to me, like the part that's missing of truth telling, reconciliation. So for him, he was always like, everything is connected. And if we make these connections, it can help us move forward. And of course, being artistic, like, that's definitely the way to, and a storyteller is a way to carry that legacy forward for him.
Can you talk a little bit about the poem at the end and how that came into the process for you? And who is that voice, if you could share? I've always wondered.
That's my daughter, Molly.
Awesome.
So Molly's 11. Yep, that's Molly. And so Lewis, my son, he was the voiceover for many, many, many years until he hit 17. And now he's like, well, I could still do it. But, I think there's something that resonates with a little person's voice. And we listen more, The poem itself is actually a dedication to my father and the journey that he took crossing over to the spirit world. So I actually got to spend like about a little over a month with him, helping him make that journey. And that's something that I really don't share, but it's such a personal story, meaning, like, if I was to try to put it in words and explain it, I couldn't. But the blessings and gifts that came, during that time, after that time, really, like, opened up the vision and opened up, my understanding on how this is all connected to the spirit world and to Star Nation. And, like, he's traveled on, but he's still in another place. He's still here, but he's in another place. And so that's really what that poem is about, is, like vetiver, because he always wore vetiver, but it's like, it also has a plant medicinal property. And then, the Star Nation, and just, talking about the morning star, because that was something that was also very significant to our traditional stories about passing on, and the Star Nation as well. And so the next one is a dedication to our missing and murdered relatives. And it was actually a project for the American Indian Prison Project. The director is Stephanie Autumn. So she's an old AIMster. She's one of the original women warriors of the AIM movement. And she asked me to produce a video that dedicated itself to the unseen. So it's really about the families, the women who have returned home, the communities that have come together, to search for their loved ones, to honor their loved ones, and all of the unseen heroes, because I think the movement itself, to some extent, has become commercialized. And I think myself, having a personal story involving missing and murdered, I have a different perspective and really focus on support for women who return home. and really looking at that. It's important to bring visibility to this issue, but it's also important to collectively understand that we're all part of this movement, even though if we aren't in the forefront, we're all still doing our part. So this is the video, and it also features Nadonis Rose Green's photos in here.
We see you, sister, your spirit filled with grace and beauty, shining bright like summer sunsets. We see you, loved ones searching for your lost family members, families holding on to hope, waiting for their return. We see you, the invisible leaders who carry on the work in silence. Your compassion and humility, an example to us all. We see you, community united, standing together, searching for our missing relatives and holding up the victims to the light of healing. We see you, the youngest ones who go missing in the system or are stolen in the night, our babies, our children, and our future generations. We see you, our two-spirit relatives, fighting to be acknowledged in this moment and in this world, remembering your role as sacred human beings. We see the boys and men who stand alongside the women in solidarity. Brother, this is our movement just as much as yours. We see you, we honor you, we love you.
I would imagine there's so much to say here. But one thing I was curious about is what kind of feedback you've received from this piece, because I believe this one went on social media. I'm not sure where else this one went.
Yeah, this one actually was launched online, and we released a clip, like a minute clip first, and just to test waters to see, really what the audience feedback was. And I think just in that, people thought it was actually the complete video, which I was like, wow, okay. But once we launched it online, for us, the reach in the audience is a little bit different than, public television. And this piece in itself is really about honoring and gifting, the Indigenous people and the allies and the supporters and the organizations who help to do this work. So the intention really is to be a gift and to allow it to float and to be in cyberspace or cyber world for whoever wants to catch it. And I think if we think about creation, any sort of creative form like filmmaking, and what our intention is and how we give that to the world. So this one definitely had a lot of different feedback, meaning I think this reached people in a way, just in the song and the intention and bringing women forward. And I think also answering the question that a lot of men have, which is, this is the women's movement, this is for women, and that's why we don't say anything. I'm like, well, it is your movement too, and your role is to stand up. So if you see something that's not right, if you see a woman that isn't being treated, doesn't matter what situation it is, it's your job to stand up. It's your job to support. It's your job to help our women in this movement, instead of saying, well, this is yours. And it's like, well, we're carrying this movement forward because they're really, we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice right now. And our men, also can heal. I think that's really important, is encouraging our men to heal and to be in touch with their feelings and emotions, and also becoming more emotionally intelligent. And I think that's really the key to all of this, is just, there's no, we cry, we're supposed to cry, we're supposed to show our feelings, we're supposed to have our intuition, we're supposed to navigate the world that way. And if our men can carry that forward too, if we raise our boys and we raise our young men that way, we'll be able to make strides, especially in this movement, and we'll be able to do this with a lot of love and grace.
I agree with the very beautiful and moving comment. I'm curious, your work really has, both of these pieces really have a mission or a message, and it feels like they're coming from your voice. Like some films, you're not sure who the filmmaker is. You're not sure like what their opinion is on a thing, and I feel like these are, from my perspective, they seem to have a strong voice of the filmmaker. And I'm curious if this is a style that pulls through the rest of your work, or where does that live?
Yeah, it really is my life and my perspective on film, in film. All of the people that are in my circle, especially my children, and we're moms, we're all moms, right? And so we're like, hey, you got to keep your kids at home. And it's like, well, we can't really, right? Especially right now, that doesn't work. But, how are we going to pass on our legacy to our children unless they don't see, they need to see what we're doing. They need to be a part of that process. And I feel like society just needs to get used to it. That's really, our jobs as mothers and our jobs as parents and fathers, to pass that on. And I think we're at a really amazing time right now to do that. So, there's that part to it, but then there's also the part of the people that are along this journey with me. Austin, he's my adopted brother, and he's Art Owen's son, and he's really stepping into a role where he's carrying on his father's legacy. And he's kind of like, wherever you want to go, sis, let's go, and with, all of the other people that show up and that come forward, it's like, we all are part of this narrative. We're all a part of this story. We all come together and we all have different pieces to the story. And, we come from the stars, it's like, that really was evident how all of these stories came together. It was like this puzzle. And then it was like, here we go. This is the line that brings it all together. And that's really the influence of the people around me that I listen to and I hear and I trust. And I want them to be a part of this story. And I also would like, for people to see, like, these are people that you see at Target. These are people that you see at Walmart. These are people that you see in the grocery store, and you never guess the wealth of knowledge that they have, especially, the seventh generation, especially our young ones. So, it's really bringing that life and that narrative forward.
If I just jump
Go
in
for it.
Like that's the thing, right? We like this idea of autonomy of voice so present in Indigenous communities, and how we engage with each other to say, this is what I think, and this is what I see, and this is how I feel about it, and expect that the other person isn't just gonna agree and say, yeah, me too. Like they're gonna say, oh, this is how I see it and how I think and how I feel about it, and then translate that into like media. So there's so many ways that we can tell the stories that, and not have to lose ourselves in it. And I think that that's where Indigenous media is really going to strike out in a good way, strike out, not like baseball, and make a difference in media, because we don't intend to sound like what everybody else is hearing and thinking, and when we don't embrace the idea of like conforming to what everybody is used to. And I think that's what the main media is ready for. Because we watch a film made by somebody else, and no offense to all those other people, but it starts, we can write the script as soon as we see the first 5 minutes, right? But with Indigenous media, it is different, because we have a different story to be heard and a different story to express, and that has not been widely understood. So yeah, and Missy is just really doing this in a powerful way, for sure.
Yeah. And like, even the way we tell stories, like we kind of have these circles that just overlap, and they come back and they come back. And it's always about, like John Trudell, he always talks about following that line. He's like, I'm just following that line. It's the same thing with the story. It's like things happen, like really big things happen in these productions that are like, okay, you're done, you stop. And one of the most valuable things that I can bring forward, are our teachings, like to smudge, to offer tobacco, to ask permission, to include elders, to include the right people on these projects. Because if we're telling these stories, we also have to acknowledge our ancestors. We have to acknowledge those wisdom and knowledge keepers who are part of this process. And then, understand that this is going to be a very humbling process. And the people that you're traveling with, you have to treat them with love and respect and care. And that's something that's not apparent in the industry. You know what I mean? Like we have hard deadlines. We have, if you don't do it, then, we have all of this pressure, on us. But it's like, if we understand the flow of like Indigenous cinema and Indigenous storytelling, it's like, we know we'll get to that place. It's like what Don was saying. It's like, it was so worth it. And I'm like, yes, it is so worth it. Like, I know it's going to be this hard. It's supposed to be hard, but in the end, it's like, it will come through. But it's like testing me to be like, are you sure you want to stick with this? Are you sure and it's kind of like, that's how Native lives are. That's how it is to be Indigenous. You're given all of these really hard tests, and just to make sure that your commitment is there. And it's like, I don't see that really explain. I think in like mainstream media, like what you're saying, it's like, we can tell so many different stories now because of the world we live in. People aren't going to like physical film festivals anymore. I mean, that's something that we have to really accept. And we also have to realize that like, we need to partner like with people like Don. And I want to say like Don is one of the first documentary filmmakers that I came across in the Twin Cities when I was at MCAD. And I remember going to one of her screenings, I think it was at Bryant Lake Bowl, and she was there, and yeah, she's laughing, and she was being celebrated. And I just looked at her like, this is amazing, because she opened that path for me. And I think that's one of the Indigenous values that we have. It's like, you open a pathway, and she continues to do that for women in cinema. She continues to support. And that to me is something that should be valued and should be looked at and should be honored. And even to think in the broad spectrum of public media and giving people access to our stories, and even carrying that forward to like a film festival, or seeing where else can we put this? Where else can we tell these stories?
I think that the PBS audience, I can't speak for all the audiences out there, clearly, but I think that the PBS audience is hungry for stories from Indigenous storytellers. It's, I think there is a recognition that that these stories have not been told from an Indigenous perspective, and that is incredibly valuable, and it's time. So I'm just happy to be here. But I'm wondering if we should move on to another clip. I don't know how many clips we have, Missy.
We just have one more to go.
Okay.
Yep. Just one more. I timed it out.
Awesome.
Okay, so this one is it's more of a trailer, and so it's a collage. I like to call my work collage work. Because it's different mediums. There's like elements of 360, but it's in two-dimensional form. This is called the expanded cinema, and it's something that brings cinema outside of the theater, brings it out of institutions, out of spaces where it's not accessible to Indigenous people or people who would not go, to a museum or, a theater even to experience this. So it includes performance, live score, film, projection, like what's called, I know there's probably younger people that'll be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. But video controllerism, which is basically like being a video DJ, and you use like a MIDI control, or you can use a keyboard and it syncs up different clips. You can animation, anything, like the sky's the limit. And it also, the second phase is also 360, which actually isn't included in this trailer, but it follows the story of the Coyote Way. It follows the story of Charlie, who's a trickster. So this is really the second installment of the Coyote Way. And we really are fortunate because we can actually screen the film and have this performance happen while the film is screening to add a whole nother dimension and a layer to it. So we'll just go ahead and watch the trailer.
My name is Missy Whiteman. I played Charlie in the short film The Coyote Way, Going Back Home. Going Back Home is the first short film in the Coyote Way trilogy, rooted in the traditional Native American trickster stories, which blends elements of the metaphysical and physical human existence. This sci-fi docu-narrative film pushes the boundaries by incorporating time travel, parallel universes, and DNA memory. What makes this film so special? There's no verbal dialogue in the film, and the only form of communication is Plains American Indian Sign Language. Historically, American Sign Language is based off this intertribal trade language and is utilized in pre-colonial contact. I see this film as a means to document, preserve, and revitalize Indigenous language and culture for future generations. I think this film will change the way people see Native Americans in film, because, not all, in these old Western movies where they're wearing their war bonnets, going around killing people and shooting them with bow and arrows, their names, they're really weird names. It's not like that, we don't go around killing people and, saying weird stuff and doing weird chants. We're just like everybody else,
Tap on your kick and snare and do what needs to be.
I'm going to jump in right away and say something, because when I took my son, Hunter, to Blue Man Group, so like maybe 15 years ago, they came when they did their tour and they were in Duluth. I took him, and somebody was doing video DJ right at the beginning to open for the Blue Man Group. And everyone was kind of like just talking like, I said to my son, this is where the future is. I said, this is what people will be doing artistically. I said, this guy's a little, janky right now, but this is good. When we learn how to do that, then our stories will be able to be told and understood because of how interwoven and many layers there are. Yeah. Okay. I just had to blurt that out before I forgot. But there it is.
Of course, the musician has to say that, right? Yeah, it is. It's like, it is a future. It's like, I think people called it like, what is it? Indigenous futurism, but it's like, we're here right now. Like we're at that point now. And how do we move that forward? And because of COVID, it's like, now we can have this outside. We really truly have a space and place, and we can also live stream it. We can do so many different layers to it. And, this performance was at Indigenous Roots in St. Paul. And that was the last performance that we had. This is like the first time and the last time that we had this. And I'm really grateful that we got to do this, because it's like, this is like what we're holding on to. Like, this is a process that we're all still continuing to work towards and developing our own crafts as artists and as storytellers. And luckily we get to have the time now to process that much slower, because before it's like, okay, now we're going to do this. We're going to launch it here and we're going to travel to California. We had like this entire tour mapped out, and then like, okay, here we are. And now it's like, where can we do this? And it's like, well, what I'm doing next is working with different reservations with small pods of youth. And so what they're going to do is they're going to curate, they're going to produce their video, anything that they want, video, poem, documentary, anything, but it has to include elders. It has to include our traditional stories. And then we're going to bring in different artists to help them with this process. But for me, it's really about giving them the choice of saying, you can project outside, you can have, music, you can VJ, you can do whatever you want. And this is yours. If you want to jingle dress, if you want a fancy shawl, if you want to hoop dance, if you just want to do something really artsy and like random, go for it. This is your space and place. But it's also bringing fine arts and bringing artists who have fine arts background or who are really at a level in their discipline, and they want to share that with like future artists and future generations to take this on as their own.
So is this something that you're planning on mounting this summer as an outdoor? I'm curious, like with the COVID thing, and it sounds like you're kind of holding back a bit, but when is it born again so people can see it?
So we're going to have to have it in little tiny pieces. And so part of that vision and dream for me is to bring in like my visual arts background and to have a mural, and then to have video mapping on the mural with projection and with performance. And so there actually will be a mural project in St. Paul with a smaller expanded cinema around whatever the mural is about. I mean, as we can tell right now, it's probably going to be sacred sites and star maps, just following the lines. But there's also going to be some other partnerships with like NACD and Hennepin Theater Trust, and there's going to be other opportunities to see pockets. But I really don't see like a full expanded cinema happening until next year. And so this year it's really, little pockets, like little performances, little screenings, little things here and there in communities. But we'll definitely keep it live streamed, and we'll keep people, aware of what we're doing as we're moving forward. So, and then 360 is the main component. Like that's the main thing that we're going to drop this year, is our 360 content that we've produced and have been waiting to launch. So we're like, we might as well do it. Let's go for it. See what happens.
That's awesome. I loved the statement, was it sci-fi docu narrative film? I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard of a sci-fi docu narrative film.
It's definitely like a hybrid. It's a hybrid film. And like, that's one of the things, like, that's why I'm like, it's a collage, you know, like that's my visual arts background coming forward saying, this is a collage. Like my intention of like producing films is really like about being an art house cinema producer and then producing like eventually installations, which, you know, it's happening. But now that media is changing so much, you know, and there's so many different layers, like we can actually tell a narrative story with all of these different elements. So really what makes it a documentary is like there are scenes that are filmed with the actors actually interacting with like the cars, you know, like the four corner scene of our, you know, our buffaloes on the Ave, our homeless relatives. Like that was not scripted. It was something where we just had the camera and they interacted with signs. They made their own signs. They had their own messages that they wanted to share with the world. And then they interacted. And then we pulled together all the money and we gave it to our relatives on the street. And I think we made like $30. And so we're like, you know, we gifted it, you know, and it was like, that's a documentary. The narrative part is like, it is scripted. And then sci-fi, obviously, because there's like time travel, there's like DNA memory, there's all of these different elements that play with time, which makes it science fiction.
So, what was the moment, Missy, when you decided I'm going to start to make films? What was there a moment or a chapter or?
Yeah, it was watching The Outsiders. So it was like when I was young and I watched The Outsiders and I was like, that's my story. Like I wanted to so much be like the characters in that movie. I was like, when I grow up, I want to be Pony Boy, you know, I want to be, you know, like that. I feel like that's how I want to be. And I am, I mean, it is kind of like that, right? I have all of like my brothers around me and I have like all of these creative people and we're all kind of just doing our thing. And, but for me, it was really like looking at that film and saying, that's me, but also I want to do that. Like, it was always like, I would like to do something big like that. And it was like, maybe I'll go into acting, but then I realized as an actor, you don't have a lot of input in scripts. You don't have a lot of input in production. And then it was like, all right, I'll just go ahead and try out, you know, filmmaking and see if this works and see if I like it. And then, you know, in college, that was like the time that Chris Eyre came out with Smoke Signals. And that's, you know, the time of dawn too, where it's like these people like are like, here's the door, here it is open for you. And I'm an accessible director and somebody that's actually here, you know, in your sight. And this is, you know, this is something that you can accomplish. So I think that was the biggest challenge being young, because I automatically dismissed, because I didn't even know that what a director was. I didn't even know the process of production. I had no clue. And so I was like, I'm just going to be an artist like Dad, and then go into the art house, you know, scene and see what happens there. And now, you know, we're here. So
It raises that I was thinking about that. You can't, it's cliched, but you can't, or it's hard to see it. And what is it? See it and be it. You have to see it in order to be it, or be it in order to see it. The idea of being able to see somebody who reflects your life, and you're like, oh, I can do that, you know. And I was thinking about the smoke signals reference in particular. It's like, okay, this is a thing. Yeah.
got to see it to be it. And that's kind of like what's, yeah, that's what I hope I can do too for like future filmmakers, and be like, these are all the ways that we kind of try to figure this out. And now you can do whatever you want. And, you know, the next step is really having a platform of our own, you know, because I know like everything's streaming, everything is online. And I'm not saying like, you know, like you said, Liz, I'm not the expert, but I do kind of have an idea of which direction to go. And I'm hoping that a younger person will take this on and just run with it. You know, I'm hoping that someone will be like, I align with what you're saying, and I'd love to carry that forward. So that's the hope.
Absolutely. There's so many talented young people that what they see you doing and what they see other people doing, and they've never even seen smoke signals, right? And they're just moving forward. And I think of that way too. I'm like, oh man, why am I stepping up to do this? Well, because that door is right there for me right now. So I'll stumble through it with the hopes that somebody else is going to say, I could do that. I can do it better than her. Right? Well, please, because it is time, and everybody's perspective is unique and helps to inform us to become a better society, and that is crucial because, as we know, we got room to grow.
So how did you pick up your skills, like your technology skills, your filmmaking skills? How did that come to be?
I actually learned a lot of that with Thalia Drury. Do you know Thalia?
Mm-mm.
So she actually taught at MCAD when I was there, and so I was really fortunate to actually have a lot of her classes and learn from her. So I actually learned filmmaking first. And I know like not a lot of colleges offer filmmaking, but I really want to encourage, younger filmmakers. It doesn't matter if they're in college or not to, rent a film camera or borrow one, find someone that has ones and, and try it out, just start learning film and then send it out. And then you learn patience, you learn, like this shot is it, this is it, there's no going back into your camera and fixing it. And, you have to just know what you're doing. And if not, you got to realize mistakes are part of the process. So there's that. And I really came in the cusp of like analog to digital. So I rode with computers crashing, data being lost and crying all the time. And now I'm looking at the software and now I'm looking at like how streamlined it is. And I'm like, oh, I'm not saying it's a cakewalk. I'm not saying that. I'm not taunting like the universe at all. I'm not, but I'm saying like, it's a lot more streamlined than when I was learning. And so, it's like you learn skills and it's kind of the foundation to move forward. And it's always like you learn as you go along, like if there's a project, it's like, what can I learn to bring to this project? How can I up my skills? But, I'd have to say like, it was really lucky that I was wanting to learn so many different things. Like, in high school, I wanted to learn animation. So I took a semester of animation and, in college, I did a little bit of animation, but, and now I'm like working with Jonathan Thunder, with our cohort with NACD, and he's like furthering that animation skill. And it's like, I think as a filmmaker, the more you know, the more you want to learn, and you have like this little toolkit that can help you be an independent producer versus COVID time, which is like, nope, you're not going to do this. Nope, you can't do that. And so for us, we just had like 2 people on our team that just were like, okay, we're in it. We're in our little boat. Let's just bring our skills together and move forward and see, what happens. So, yeah.
Wondering if you could talk to us a little bit more about it as a collaborative art form, because I'm hearing you talking about that you have a group of people that you inspire and they inspire you, and they're in and out of, it sounds like they're kind of in and out of the process depending on the project and what they're up to. But I think that piece of collaboration and how that fuels your work.
Yeah, so I think that reaches back to like my dream to have like, what were they called? They're like salons, and artist manifestos. Like I really like was like romanticized by like my dad's stories of like to be an ultimate artist, you have to like have a salon and have a collective and have a manifesto. I don't have the manifesto yet, but, and then also like muralist, like he's like the ultimate like art form is to be a muralist. So I'm working on that. So it's really like, it is really his influence. I'm like, I feel like I'm just your puppet in a good way, right? But the collective part of it right now, especially, is like, we can't do these things alone anymore. I mean, I think before the time of like the director being at the helm, you know, and being able to drive the ship, but there's so many people that now have so many different skill sets to bring to the process. And every single person that I work with, they all have like some sort of a video background. Even if they're musicians, they all have some sort of production background so that they know how this all works together, or they're dabbling in different mediums. But really the alignment is about the purpose of telling our stories, and then also telling it in a ceremony, like almost like a ceremony, but not quite, but just having that intention, you know, in how we're working together and finding that flow and seeing how we come together with that flow. And so the collective, I mean, right now we see a lot of collectives popping up. We see a lot of people that are coming together, but it's like, that's kind of your pod that you're going to be stuck with for a little while, you know, and it's also like family. And now we're growing our pod to like include younger filmmakers and media makers in this process and producing their work now, because I feel like I wasn't quite ready to do that. But now I'm like, okay, now I'm ready because I know enough of what this landscape looks like. And I'm like, we're just basically collectively building a new landscape. You got to get in on the ship, Don. That's all I got to say. You do.
Which ship?
Come on in our ship, Don. You too, Don. Everyone. Yeah, everybody, come on in the ship. Let's do this. That's how I feel. Yep.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Collectively build a new landscape. I like that.
Yep. Yep. And that's taking away like the hierarchy of the industry, you know, the elitism of the industry, because I see so many filmmakers get just discouraged because they don't make it into Sundance, or they don't make it into the labs, or they're told no for funding. And to me, that reads to them like that their story isn't valuable. You know, and to me, I'm like, everybody's story is valuable. You just need to surround yourself with people that have the technical know-how to help you tell that story.
Yep, absolutely.
Or get it yourself. Go to college at Liz's college.
Oh, yes. That was the message.
Yep. Intern with Don. There you go. That's how you do it.
Thank you, Missy. Thank you, Missy. That's the plug we were waiting for. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're good.
Oh, we're good. Yeah, this is awesome. That was beautiful.
Oh,
Do we have any questions from the people in the audience? I've been trying to keep a look there, but. And we're recording, so this will live on in perpetuity.
uh-oh.
And you can eat whatever you want when you edit. Anything you want. When you're an editor, I know some people like, I've learned like this process of like with editing, like if I'm going to eat, I'm also going to have to exercise. So Darren, another person that I work with who's out in Boston, he taught me that like to exercise, like we would go on like really super long treks around the city and then we'd edit. And I was like, okay, we'd eat and then we edit. I'm like, okay, this makes sense because you're sitting there.
Can I ask you what software do you use when you are editing?
Well, right now I'm using Adobe Premiere because it's pretty much streamlined with other you know, producers and other creative people, and the cloud is amazing. But I actually like the last ship that I was on was Final Cut Pro. What was it, X, or the one before that? I don't know. The ones that you could put the plugins in, have a lot more control over. But yeah, Adobe Premiere right now is what I'm working on. But like honestly, like you can go to TikTok and learn how to edit.
Oh, thanks. There goes the plug for our program. Now,
Oh no, like I still feel like TikTok's going to be a part of cinema. Like I really do. I feel like that's the first step into getting into cinema's TikTok. It's like, what's your reel? It's like, look at my TikTok. And it's like, you know, there's so many young people that are telling such amazing stories on TikTok. And it's like, now it's our job to go to them versus them coming to us, which,
Right.
you know, that's smart.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, I could spend like hours on TikTok and be like, I've learned so much about what it's like to be a young Indigenous person or just a person living in the world today, you know? So I want to say like that's the beginning skill set is like apps and things like that. But I really want to say like if you want to further your knowledge base, yeah, definitely go to school, and then intern and apprentice with filmmakers. Like I would love to have younger people to work with me and have the commitment.
Sounds like MMP is adding TikTok.
Yeah!
Exactly.
Well, if you know what social media is and you know how media works and how what its function is and how it's like changed the identity of Indigenous people or just people in general and how much power it has, I think that that's a powerful tool to know how to navigate. So I would be all for it.
Yeah, true.
Yep. Can you imagine? How'd you do on your TikTok quiz? You know?
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I'm not going to even go there with the music because it's like there's certain songs. So yeah. I don't even want to try in case my son's watching. So he's a strict no, like producing on TikTok. I've got like 1 or 2 videos on TikTok. That's it. He's like, nope, you can't produce anymore. Nope. Nope. Okay.
Well, I think that unless we have other things we need to say before we wrap up, I think today has just been really exhilarating. Even though maybe I don't look exhilarated now at this time of night, but it has been exhilarating. And as we move forward in the next couple of days, tomorrow we have the panelists from starting at 1 o'clock. We'll have our opening at 12:30. Panelists one every hour on the hour until the poetry slam at 9 o'clock, which will be in another Zoom live format. And then Sunday is the awards. And but if you want to come back, Missy will be back with us at 1 o'clock tomorrow with Gary Farmer, and Sir Curtis Kirby III has joined your panel. Did you see that, Missy?
I didn't, but I've known Kirby since he was in diapers. So I get to like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. Oh my goodness. Yay. I love Kirby. Kirby's awesome.
Thank you so much, Missy and Dawn.
Thank you, everyone.
Wrap it up with Oshkii Giizhik Singers singing at the St. Louis River, a song about how much our grandmother loves us, how much our Mother Earth loves us, and how we're going to live a good life. Miigwech Giizhik, thanks for coming. We'll see everybody tomorrow.
Hey, hey, hey.